Fear Zone, your channel for real horror stories. Good evening, everyone, and now let's move on to today's story, which is about Mr. Almir, and it happened to him in the city of Santo Angelo, which is in Brazil, and at the time, which was in 2013, Mr. Almir was 44 years old. Today, I'm going to tell you something that was mysterious to me, that I got involved in a story with a werewolf, and I found out more than I should have. And it all starts like this. I'm an ordinary person who works and has a family, and the neighborhood I live in is a normal place with streets and lots of houses, which is in the center of the city. But as the story begins, one weekend, my aunt and uncle came to visit me, and conversation went back and forth with these relatives, and then the hours went by until night came, and my aunt and uncle asked me to take them away to their home, which was a farm in a rural neighborhood of our city. So I started up my car and began to drive my relatives to their house, which was a kind of small farm. And as my uncle's residence was in a rural area, I took several dirt roads along the way, and it gave me the creeps to pass through those places at that time of night. But what happened was that, halfway along the road, I saw a strange creature in the woods, and it seemed to be some kind of huge, weird dog. At that point, I asked my uncle if he had seen this beast, and he said no, but he told me that this creature had been seen by many farmers, and that this story is an old one in our region, that at a certain time, some people say they saw this creature, and then years go by, and nobody talks about it anymore. But the people who have seen this beast say that it could be a hellhound or a maned wolf. This relative of mine even thought that it was just the talk of the people in his village, because nobody reported that this maned wolf had invaded any house. And after a while, we arrived at my uncle's farm, and I ended up leaving him there. And then I took the road back to my house, and with that, I passed through several streets of land where there were only woods and ranches. And when I arrived at a certain point on a road, I saw by the light of my car's headlight something strange happening about 30 meters ahead. And with that, I slowed down the car, but then getting closer to what happened, I was astonished by what I saw, because it was certainly that maned wolf that I had seen in the bush a little while ago, and he was attacking a man on the road. And what this animal was doing was that he was trying to pull this guy into the bush and dragging him by the hem of his pants. While I was getting closer with the car, this animal was trying to drag that guy even faster into the vegetation that was on the side of the dirt road. At that moment, I was frightened by what I was seeing, of that guy screaming and asking for help, and I had to do something fast, otherwise that beast would end up tearing that guy apart. But I got close to the beast with my car, and it was almost in the bush with the man, and I quickly opened the door of my car and got out. Well, I was scared, but I was standing next to the open door of my car, and I was ready to run if anything went wrong. So I picked up some stones from the ground and threw them at this beast. But something started to happen, because while I was throwing the stones at this animal, it got out of the four-legged position, it got down on its knees, and put both arms in front of its face to defend itself from the stones. Then, to my amazement, it stood up and balanced itself on two legs as if it were a man. Then it ran on its feet into the forest so as not to be hit by any more stones and hurt. At that point, I told the guy who was being dragged by this werewolf to get in my car, and so this guy did. And then, I got into my car as well, and I left the place driving. And to me, this animal was a werewolf, because it looked like a big black dog that stood and ran like a man. However, while we were taking the road back, the guy I had saved from the werewolf told me that he lived nearby, and that he had a habit of going into the woods at that time to smoke, and so he came across this creature. This guy said that he tried to run, but the creature went after him and managed to catch up with him, and luckily I appeared at that moment on the road. Well, I didn't really believe this story that this country bumpkin told me. It sounded like he was hiding something, but I found it very strange that this country bumpkin wasn't hurt by the werewolf's attack. The fact is, I took this man to his house, and I was perplexed and frightened by the place, which was a kind of very old ranch, and it was even scary to pass by that place. But on closer inspection, there was a man and a woman holding a hunting net to catch animals, and they were also carrying lanterns and looking at the woods near the ranch. They were certainly relatives of the redneck. I found this strange, and this Kaipira told me to come into his ranch for a while, and I said no, because I didn't have time for that. And then I got into my car and drove back to my uncle's house to tell him what had happened to me on the road, when I had saved a resident of a ranch from a werewolf attack. And when I got to my uncle's house, I talked to him about the whole story. My uncle had a gun in his house, and with that, I calmed down and went back to my home in the city. As soon as some time had passed since my experience with the werewolf, I went back to my uncle's house to find out if this creature had appeared in the area or if anyone had seen it. He said no. This relative of mine warned me not to go past the house of the farmer I had saved from the werewolf, because that family was very strange, because my uncle told me that he'd been in front of that old ranch a few times, and he told me that there were lots of old symbols drawn on the trees nearby, and even on the walls of their house. And for sure, these people worked with black magic, and that this creature from the region had already been seen on that ranch. And my uncle also told me that once, when he was a teenager, he went into this ranch with some friends to steal fruit, but while they were walking through the backyard of the rednecks, he saw the stranger's ranch, the trees with scratches from some animal's claws, and they also saw an iron chain, which seemed to be made to hold animals or even people, and that there were no dogs on the ranch. Even so, when I found out about these things because of that, I didn't go to this bumpkin's house to see how he was, because I wonder if he had anything to do with that werewolf, because the creature didn't attack him ferociously that day, and it seemed that the beast even had some connection with the bumpkin on the road. Well, at least my uncle. I never heard if this creature appeared in the area again, but I know one thing. This creature exists and attacks people. And it could be that this werewolf came from the ranch of that guy I saved. Good night. Well, if you liked the story, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Fear Zone, your channel for real horror stories.